Good morning, Bhargav. It's the 8th of February, a Wednesday. Here's the heads-up briefing for today. For the Southeast Asia production, we covered 15 issues. For North Asia, we covered 5. And for the Australasia and Pacific Islands, we covered 4. In South Asia, we covered 18 issues, plus the major issues in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa regions.
Hey, Uday. So there seems to be a lot of issues you have covered. Which are the major ones I should be following, though?
Yeah, Bhargav. So in Duga in West Papua yesterday, the West Papua National Liberation Army attacked a plane at an airstrip. They kidnapped the pilot. He's a New Zealand citizen, and they've held him. They also kidnapped about 15 local Indonesian workers. Now they've threatened to kill the New Zealand citizen and the other Indonesians if the government does not accept their demands. So it's a very tense situation at the moment, and we're following it closely. Yeah. Now moving on, we also covered the violence in Melita and the Solomon Islands yesterday. It's still tense at the moment. A lot of the news coming out will say that, it's a China thing, but it's a much larger picture than that. There's a lot of historical tensions and grievances between Guadalcanal and Melita, well, the people on them. Moving on to Myanmar. Myanmar and Russia signed an agreement to develop small nuclear power plants. How feasible this is remains to be seen, as the government in Myanmar does not control the whole country. In Thailand, unionized workers threatened protests if working conditions for public health ministry contracted and temporary workers are not improved. They also asked for pay raises for operations in the Deep South, which are the provinces of Yala, Patani, Narathiwat, and Songkhla, where insurgent violence has continued in the last few months. Moving over to South Asia, a terrorist with the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan was arrested by the Counterterrorism Department in Multan in Punjab province yesterday. Also in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, 12 Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan terrorists were killed in Laki Malwat.
There in Pakistan, the government needs to look closely how best to tackle this menace of TTP. The last time they went head to head with the insurgent organization, their major cities were on fire, quite metaphorically, of course, and they had to face a lot of reputational issues and business issues at an international level. It went to an extent that no cricket team would actually visit Pakistan. So it was so bad. So things seem to be heading in a similar direction. So the army as well as the civilian government needs to decide how best to tackle this. Uh, Clearly, the armed approach doesn't seem to be working, at least until now.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that everyone has different approaches they want to try. So it's not looking good for Pakistan. Bhargav in Bangladesh, security forces arrested tribal insurgents and Islamist terrorists and the Bandarbans in the Chittagong hill tracts. Now, this is where we're seeing some activity between a newly formed terrorist group in Bangladesh and some of the more tribal insurgent groups. Now, this hasn't really been seen much before, so these last few months, this is a bit of a worrying development. Moving over to Sri Lanka, so there's going to be trade union protests today against the government. Now, this comes ahead of the local government elections on the 9th of March.
So in Sri Lanka, there the pressure seems to be building quite a bit on the incumbent government, both from political parties on the ground with the impending elections, and from international organizations, including IMF, with when they insist on structural changes or increase in tax regime. So we need to watch this closely, how the current government can tackle both ends at the same time, while committing blunders like massive festivities for national holidays like Independence Day.
Right, yeah, that's a very good point. Lastly, Bhargav, in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region, nearly 1 million people protested in France yesterday against the pension reform proposals. Strikes occurred at oil refineries in the country. Electricity production across the country decreased by 6% also. So the effects of the Russia-Ukrainian war are not ending anytime soon, and it's putting Macron's government in a very tight place at the moment. So that's a brief for today, Bhargav. Anything else from you?
Nothing else from my end, Uday. Thank you very much for the brief.